and them which sat with him at meat, he commanded it to be given her. Notice this, teenager. Peer pressure is huge. They're sitting, they're probably drinking, there's an inappropriate dance going on, and what does it say? And them which sat with him and ate meat, they're watching all this dialogue go on, and peer pressure is huge, teenager. I'm telling you, straight A students run together and straight F students run together. Teenagers with higher morals and values run together. Teenagers with low morals and values run together. So he's sitting around with a bunch of wicked men watching this inappropriate dance going on, and he feels what? He feels the pressure. I got to give into it now. He's weak here. Now, it's amazing what compelled this man. Utter absent of character. You see John the Baptist's character, but then you see Herod's character. He's more concerned about his reputation with all these drunken sots that were sitting there, that he just didn't want to stand up and say, you know, this is wrong. What am I doing? Then you come to verse 10. And he sent and beheaded John in the prison. I mean, think about it. What a horrible way to end a party. And what a horrible way to do that. A wonderful note ends this ugly scene. If you drop down, if you look at verse 11, and his head was brought in a charger and given to the damsel, and she brought it unto her wicked mother. Verse 12, and his disciples, isn't this good, came and took up the body and buried it and went and told Jesus what had happened. I think they kind of knew Jesus would want to know. By the way, neither Herod nor Herodias accomplished anything by killing John the Baptist. You want to know why? They still had their sin. I think they were feeling guilt here. Look back, if you would, up at verse 1 of chapter 14, or verse 2. And said, this is Herod now, Herod said unto his servants, this is John the Baptist. I mean, think about it. Who was it really? It was Jesus, right? But his guilt weighed down upon him, and Jesus, you see in verse 1, the fame of Jesus spread. Herod heard about this, and what happened? The guilt of what he had just done, this was something that had already happened. He had already killed John the Baptist, and the guilt weighed him down. So even though he chopped off John the Baptist's head, it didn't accomplish anything. He still had his sin. He could silence the voice of John, but you know what he couldn't silence? He couldn't silence truth. He couldn't silence the guilt. Herod wanted to see Jesus if he was John, but he never saw that. I mean, if you look over to Luke as another comparison to Luke chapter 13. Luke 13, look back at verse 31 as a comparison to this. Hold your finger in Matthew 14, we'll come back to it. Luke 13, look at verse 31. Because when he finally saw Jesus, it was when Jesus was sent to him at his trial, and Herod obviously contributed to the execution of Jesus. And you see here, there's a message from Jesus in Luke 13. And look at verse 31. Notice what it says. The same day there came certain of the Pharisees, saying unto him, get thee out, and depart, Jesus, depart hence. Why? For Herod wants to kill you. Look at what Jesus says. Verse 32. And Jesus, he said unto them, go ye and tell that fox, behold, I cast out devils. Notice what Jesus is saying. And I do curses today, and I'm going to do them tomorrow, and the third day I shall be perfected. 33. Nevertheless, I must walk today and tomorrow and the day following, for it cannot be that a prophet perish out of Jerusalem. You know what he's saying there? You go back and you tell that fox, Herod, he can't kill me until my work is done. Until my run is done, he's not going to kill me. You go back and you tell him that. And we know that was the case, because he may have killed John the Baptist, but you're not going to kill Jesus until God's work was done, and that pretty much ended the story. And John had all the heavenly power, and Herod died, and Herod went to hell. And how many times do you think he's repeated the scene of John the Baptist confronting him with his sin? And I don't think any true preacher is concerned about popularity. That's never been the goal of a true preacher. The goal of a true preacher is to do what? Just speak the truth at any price. That's why John provides such a great example, because what? He was so committed Think about this. He was so committed to the cause of Christ. But how many kind of half-hearted Christians, they're just not committed to the cause of Christ? And John the Baptist said, you know what? I don't care if I'm speaking in front of a beggar. I don't care if I'm in front of a king. I'm going to tell them what they need to hear, because why? Jesus compels me to do that. I'm the forerunner of Jesus. I got to tell people the truth. You got to love his commitment. So John, who came on the stage in such a prominent way, goes off the stage. And then if you would, flip back to Luke chapter 3. And he kind of exits the scene here at the end of verse 20. And the next thing you see in verse 21, you see what? You see Jesus. Now Jesus is going to take the run now. He's on the stage, and the public ministry of Jesus is taking off here. I read this week a missionary organization wrote to David Livingstone, and they asked, here's what they said many, many years ago. David Livingstone was a missionary in Africa. And this mission organization asked David Livingstone, they said, have you found a good road to where you are ministering for the Lord? If so, we want to know how to send other men, Mr. Livingstone, to join you in the ministry and serve out what God's called you to do. Have you found a road that other men could come and serve you in your ministry? And here's what Livingstone wrote back. If you have men who will come only if they know there's a good road, I don't want them. I only want men who will come if there is no road at all. You know why? Commitment. And that was John the Baptist. Whether it was popular, whether it was something that was comfortable, he said, you know what? I'm committed to the cause of Christ. And he was committed to this cause. Where are we at in our walk with God? How committed are we in serving God? How passionate are we in finding a ministry to serve God? Well, that ends verse 20. But I tell you what I want to do, because as I said, I'm so enamored with the character of John the Baptist. I kind of got caught up this week in our Sunday school, and I kind of got enamored in the same way with another example. If you'll kind of excuse me for a minute, turn over to Acts. I want you to look at chapter 9. Because I see the same commitment out of a man here that kind of just teaches us a lesson about character. And I'm sure that you've probably gone through this chapter in your Sunday school class, but if you would just allow me for a minute or two just to kind of touch on these verses, it's just so profound when I look at someone who's committed. And I just hope that's your desire, that you're committed to Christ, that you're passionate about that. If you look at Luke, if you Acts there, chapter 9, I want you to see the commitment of Saul, who's about to be turned into Paul. And this is really good stuff. We've all seen some people come to Jesus, but they never really get committed. I mean, everything inside of them consumes someone committed to Christ. And sometimes you got casual Christians, don't you? It's just casual, you know. It's just kind of great being a Christian. But don't ask me to do a lot. Okay, I got a busy schedule here. I got to do this, and this. And usually all the stuff they got to do is me-driven. It's not others-driven. But you're going to see here, the commitment of John the Baptist was something that should be motivation to us. But you're also going to see the commitment of this guy Saul. And so Saul was saved, and he's committed his life to full-time service. And obviously that's what God expects. Listen to this. God does not expect you to be part-time. He expects you to be full-time. He's not looking for quantity. He's looking for quality. Find one ministry and own it. Find one ministry and serve in it with your life. So here we go. Look at verse number 5. Acts 9, and he said, who art thou? This is Saul speaking. Who art thou, Lord? Remember, he's been knocked down off his horse. And the Lord said unto Saul, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. Now, somewhere in verse 5, Saul becomes a believer. Saul becomes a Christian. How do you know that? Because when you get down to verse 6, you see a different man. Look at verse 6. And he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what do you want me to do? I mean, Lord, listen, what do you want me to do? Look up at verse 1. and Saul, notice this, yet breathing out hatred